spotting the early signs of burnout in kids and teens. Welcome back to the Resilient Kid podcast. I'm Ashley Costello. So some kids are 4 weeks in, some kids are 2 or 3 weeks in, back to school, back to college, maybe starting university or back to university. And I think it's really important that us, as those significant adults around them who care about and love them, we have our eyes on this at the start of term. It is so important. What do I mean by burnout? So we often think of it as something that happens to adults in high pressure jobs, but the truth is kids and teens are not immune. The earlier we spot these signs, the quicker we can step in and help them reset. It's not just about being tired after a long day or feeling stressed after a test. It's a state of emotional, mental, and physical exhaustion that can build up over time. And actually, it builds up slowly, and we don't always spot it until it's too late. And so I'm here to give you those signs today, those early warning signs that we, as parents and as teachers, can look out for. You know, when those demands just keep piling on and the kids and teens haven't got the resources to be able to cope with it. I want to tell you just a little story about how I kind of spotted this. So one of mine came home, collapsed on the sofa. I knew they weren't ill, but it was that, that phrase, I'm just done. Yep, that's where they were at. And at first I thought it was just busy, they have a lot of extracurricular stuff. But as the weeks went on, I realised it was something bigger. Something bigger was happening, and burnout was what's on the cards. And that's what I want to unpack with you today. What burnout is, why it matters for kids, and how as parents and teachers we can catch it early. So, welcome. If you have a neurodivergent child, they are more likely to head towards this. So I'm just going to give you a heads up on that before we even start. Autistic burnout, particularly, is a thing. I have quite a few students, and actually, when I say students, I'm going to say they're all girls. Can happen to either boy or girl, but they're actually girls for very good reason, because they are often perfectionists. They often want to throw themselves into everything, and they're not sure where the off button is. But today I want to talk generally, because this happens to everybody. Okay, so the way I describe it to kids, it's like when your phone battery is draining faster and faster. Even if you're plugging it in, it never gets back to that full charge. So think about normal tiredness, where they're tired and they're exhausted, but burnout is different, because tiredness can recover with rest. Burnout lingers. It just carries on. So think about the last week. Has your child or student seemed more drained than usual? Even after rest, even after a lie-in, even after a very chill weekend. It's those kind of things I want you to be looking at. So what are the warning signs? Let's have a look at them in detail so that we can go deeper and you around with those red flags. So the first one for me would be loss of motivation. A child or a teen who, loved art club and then says, what's the point? Who is the first to get to, sports club, but then I'm too tired to go. Now, stuff like that we can also have a look at, can't we? If they start to think actually they don't want to go to school, they don't want to go to after school club, sometimes that can be another issue, like bullying or not feeling comfortable in that place. But actually look at their physical state as well. So look at constant tiredness. maybe struggling to get up, maybe they're falling asleep after school, always yawning, falling asleep in the car. That's usually a big one. Um, have a look at what their mood is like. Where are they on that scale? Now, we know that with teens particularly, their mood can swing. Sometimes I think it's a revolving door. One minute they're crying, next minute they're laughing, next minute they're cross with you, next minute they're crying again. And that's okay. That's their hormones, that's their brain trying to do a huge reconstruction at this point. Teens are pruning away elements of their brain they no longer need. They're trying to manage the flush of hormones. And, and all of that is great. So we need to be very careful of what we put down irritability and moods to. But if it links in with some of these others, then take note. So especially if there's like a short fuse, arguing over things, that kind of, emotionally not being able to manage, bursting out crying, those kind. The fourth one I would say is difficulty concentrating. That might be reading the same page 5 times, complaining that they can't concentrate or can't focus, forgetting instructions. Now again, some of that can be the average teen or child, particularly if your child is neurodiverse. If they've got ADHD, a sequence of instructions is very difficult. But just have this in the back of your mind. Physical illness, physical complaints when they're talking about stomach aches, either before school, before having to go somewhere, headaches, not feeling well Sunday night, things like that. Make a note of those physical things, because what we do know is if a child is stressed or a teen and they complain about stomachache, we know from research that that can actually cause physical pain. So take it seriously, but try and have a little investigate into what's going on. And then kind of lastly, I would say withdrawing. Those who are choosing to isolate themselves, those who spending time in the room, avoiding friends, avoiding replying to friends' messages, don't really want to engage in social situations, whether that's family or friends. If they're choosing that isolation, then that is a stress response. So really think about it. We talk about fight and flight all the time, but flight is a really big one. That's isolating themselves. Freeze if they're getting, indecision. So what I would say to you here is these in isolation, not such a big deal. When several of these things, loss of motivation, constant tiredness, mood swings, difficulty focusing, physical complaints and withdrawal, when some of them show up together, it's time to pay attention. That's our red flag. That's the red flag combination for me. Which of these sound familiar for you? I'd make a note of these because as we go towards half term, as teachers, we often go, oh, it's half term. You can tell the kids are really tired, they're shattered, they've done. As we come to Christmas at the end of term, this is when we see it. This is when we see the meltdowns, the burnout, because it's a really busy term. We're busy as houses, aren't we? As a household, as schools, we're busy. So even if it's not this one, and if your child is autistic, neurodiverse, absolutely look for this during October half term. But for the average, it'll come just before Christmas. So really pay attention. Why do they burn out? Why do you think our kids and teens burn out? Well, to be fair, there's plenty of reasons. Academic pressure, tests, grades, about, their friends, who's doing better, who's doing the best. To give you an idea, because as parents, I don't think we always realise this. So right now, across the country, in schools that I've been in this week, we have had Year 7 baseline tests for English and Maths. There are assessments for year 11s. Now, you would think year 10 and 11, because they've got mocks coming up very quickly, why are we doing assessments? Well, teachers are trying to get that baseline again so that they can look at where they need to pitch the mocks. You have got already, I know this week, the 11 plus has started in some schools across Manchester, for example. And then we've got things like just end of topics. Because if you have moved up from, say, year 9 up to year 10, they're checking how much of that topic you knew before we start the actual GCSE curriculum. In primaries, lots of assessments going on. Apart from the 11 plus, if your child has taken 11 plus, you've also got the start of chat about SATs, and we're also checking reading levels and comprehension in primaries. So you think, but Ashley, they've been here less than a month. That's already what's going on in schools. That's what's going on in schools. Some schools are brilliant and they don't kind of tell the kids, but most, the chat gets out. Of course it does. And kids are not stupid. Kids are not stupid. They know when they're being tested. So academic pressure, definitely. Social pressures, lots of new friendships, especially if they've moved up to high school. Peer approval, and social media. You know, there's lots of stuff going on social media at the moment, isn't there? There's a new trend, and you know, we as a company, we think it's really funny. We've put up our new coaches and into Chat GPT, and it will roast them. It will take the mickey out of them, and it's really funny. And I've done it with the girls. I've done it with my own picture, and we've gone absolutely. It's just a laugh. Like, we can do it, but actually, kids are doing that. You know, and this is something that is really like on LinkedIn. This started as a business thing, just as a laugh, you know, to have a bit of joy with some of it and just see it. Kids are doing this now with each other's pictures. So, you know, it's those kind of things that we need to be careful of as well. Perfectionism and those self expectations. I know sometimes we've got, you know, kids who, like, my youngest is now in year 11. My eldest has just started university. And what we know is that that whole new comparison of friendships and stuff has just started. The comparison for exams for the youngest has started. So it's them putting pressure on themselves that we don't, because we think, well, we've not done it. But that doesn't matter, does it? They're doing it. Think about family dynamics, wanting to wanting to please parents, you know, and also carrying hidden worry. So when we do CPD training with schools, one of the things we talk about with teachers is that invisible backpack, that we don't know what our kids are carrying in. You know, they might be young carers, there might be difficulties in the home, there might not be a lot of money in the home, maybe they've not eaten, you know, before they've come into school. Maybe there's bullying that we don't know about. There's lots and lots of different things that those kids are carrying around that we have no clue about. I've got a 10-year-old student who is one of my clients, and they're balancing GCSE prep, you know, and mocks, approaching mocks. They have quite high level sport, and they've got a lot of family stress as well as the stuff, you know, that they're carrying themselves. And absolutely, they're heading towards burnout. And you think, how? You know, they've only been at school 3 weeks. How? Because, you know, it's how do they relieve that stress? How do they get that downtime and decompress? And, you know, at the top of the podcast, I was talking about that battery that's never quite fully charged because they never quite fully switch off. So, what's on your child or your teen's plate right now? And let me ask you this. Is it more than you'd expect to manage as an adult? You know, we talk about exams, we talk about homework, What if that was your job? If your job was coming up for an assessment or an appraisal, you had to do a test to see if you can do your job. You had to bring work home, then run the house, then try and keep up with friends, and stuff that you do, hobbies that you do outside that might have a competitive edge. Yeah, it's too much for us to manage. So we need to be aware of that. Um, so what can we do? What can we do to help these kids? Well, start a conversation. Absolutely gentle, opening question. I've noticed you're more tired lately. How are you feeling? How are you feeling? How does your body feel? How are you physically feeling as well as emotionally feeling? And try and build in some rest. Downtime, I think quite often at weekends, we want to do things with our kids. We want to, whether that's we've got to tidy the house, whether it's we want to go and visit grandparents or family friends. Be careful over scheduling them at a weekend because we think, oh, it's our downtime with our friends. But actually, sometimes they just need to just chill out at home and do nothing. Downtime for me is never wasted. It's a time to decompress and build in a bit of joy. Do have a very chill. Let them stay in the pajamas on a Saturday. If you've not got anything major to do, and just watch a movie together or play a game later on. Just chill. Don't don't and that's you as well. Don't think you have to do these elaborate dinners. It won't do them any harm to have a pizza on a Saturday night and just relax. you know all of you as a family, breaking down tasks. So what I would say is, for me, particularly those who have moved up to high school or sixth form, break down schoolwork in smaller, doable steps. They don't have to do everything in one night. As parents, we want them to get it out of the way because we start to feel their stress of that deadline. But actually, think about them just doing small bits straight after school. Doing it on the day that you get it set is really good because you've always then got time to finish it off. That's really, for me, it's kind of a no-brainer. And one of our rules is you don't do electronics until homework is done. And so it just gives them that motivation as well. But they don't have to do it all in one sitting. Get up, have a walk around, finish it the next day. The other thing I would say is encourage physical outlets. Trampolines, walking the dog. If you've got a dog, obviously don't go and just walk a random dog. Or maybe ask a neighbour, can you go and walk the dog? Getting out for a walk, getting some fresh air, things like that. If you haven't got a trampoline, maybe see if you can take them to a trampoline park if they're younger. And going to the park, the parks are free. Get the young ones out. The weather's decent enough. Get them out, wrap them up, go to the park so they can move. Even if they just climb trees, honestly, I can't tell you how well that really helps for their physical stress that they're holding. The older ones, for teens, you know, to the gym, going for a run, even if it's just around the block. Again, taking the dog out for a walk, because getting outside in nature helps reset our nervous system, and the physical movements of everything actually help us dispel all the cortisol and adrenaline that is caused by stress. I often ask my youngest to wash my car, and it's like, and I do pay him, like I do say, come on, I'll give you some money if you wash the car. Using water helps reset us. He's outside and he's physically moving. Bit of a reset, brilliant. If he's physically tired, I wouldn't ask, but it is a good way of moving that stress through. And then also model self-care, us taking a breather, taking breaks. If we've got something to do, even if we're just, whether it's cooking, while you're waiting for something, just take 5 minutes, sit down. Or, if you're cleaning the house, come on, let's all have a cup of tea and a biscuit while we just chill a little bit. It's important that we rest and we reset. And what I'd like to say there is, I think of it as the 3 R's. Rest, reassure them it's okay. We all get tired and it's really important that we rest, and then reset. Just really reset. Get that kind of downtime and decompression. That's okay. It's okay to do that, because it's the things that will stop burnout for sure. So, question for you: what's one small change you could make this week that would kind of reduce that pressure in the home and really help all of you decompress and keep that burnout at bay? So, let's just do a little recap. Main signs: motivation drops, tiredness, irritability, focus issues, physical symptoms, and possibly withdrawal. Now, in isolation, none of them are such a big thing. Maybe the withdrawal, but if you see a combination of them, they're your red flags. They're your red flags. So watch out for that. Burnout is reversible as long as you're aware of it and as long as you've got that reset and you support them. So absolutely, it is possible, but keep your eye out for those red flags now. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you have, share it with a friend or a teacher that you know, and so they can look out, particularly, if you have a child that is neurodivergent. We haven't gone into the detail of that because I think it's really important as we approach, end of terms or half term breaks, that we're all aware of this for all of our kids. Come over to the village on Facebook and join our free community there for lots more tips and tools. And then notice one small positive movement with your child or teen this week. Whether it's you connecting in with them, whether it's you getting out for a walk with them so they get some movement or whatever, it all matters. Connecting in is the foundation of resilience. It absolutely is. Take care, everyone. See you same time next week. And just a little call out, we are looking for new coaches. As you know, we have 3 amazing coaches, Emily, Fiona and SJ, and they are absolutely amazing. And we are reaching more and more kids every week. If you think that you would like to join us, have a look at the franchise brochure. Have a look at the kind of things that we do. We've got a discovery evening coming up in October. Please drop any of us. You can message them, message them and ask them what it's like to be, a franchisee, a business owner that's making a real difference, that's on a mission to reach 1 million kids, for sure. So, absolutely, if you know somebody, get them to get in touch, because the kind of issues our kids and teens are facing is not going away. And so the more people we have to help, the better. If you would want to make a difference, then reach out, please. Come and join us. We'd love to have you. Take care, everyone. Lots of love.